I had been covering political hearings for almost a decade. I'd seen grandstanding, fiery exchanges, even tears, but that morning something in the air felt different, charged, volatile, like the stillness before a thunderclap. Congressman Adam Schiff entered the chamber looking like a man who hadn't slept. His jaw was tight, eyes narrow. He didn't nod to the reporters he usually acknowledged with a half smile. He didn't make small talk. He barely breathed. His steps were sharp, deliberate, almost too precise. Something was off. We all felt it. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We want to see how far this story travels. At the bench sat Judge Jeanine Pirro, poised, composed, cold as polished steel. Her reputation preceded her, blunt, incorruptible, allergic to flattery. No one doubted her courtroom presence, least of all Schiff. The two had history, bad history. You could see it in the way he glanced at her just once, then avoided her eyes completely. This was supposed to be a closed-door ethics review, but due to legal maneuvering and some very strategic leaks, it had become a public spectacle. The cameras were live, the room was packed, the stakes were sky-high. Schiff took the stand. The clerk administered the oath. Silence fell like a curtain. Pirro opened the hearing with a tone that was cool, deliberate. She asked about a memo, simple at first, a bureaucratic breadcrumb trail, but then she shifted. Her eyes sharpened, her voice cut deeper. Congressman, she said, enunciating each word with unnerving precision, were you aware your office approved dissemination of a partially redacted brief that contradicted sworn testimony from two senior intelligence officials? The temperature in the room dropped. The tension thickened into something almost physical. Cameras clicked, pens froze. Schiff's eyes flared, his lips parted, then closed again, pressing into a tight line. He gripped the table in front of him, and then he snapped, "Don't lecture me about integrity, Judge," he said, his voice raised, trembling with restrained rage. "You're hardly in a position to question the ethics of oversight." Gas rose from every corner of the room, like a wave crashing into marble. Every journalist in the chamber sat straighter. Fingers flew over keyboards. History was being made, and we all knew it. Pirro didn't flinch. She didn't move. But her silence, her refusal to even blink, was louder than 100 gavels. For 5 long seconds she simply stared, pen frozen in midair. The court stenographer stopped typing. An aide near the back looked like he was about to be sick. Then, without raising her voice, Pirro leaned forward. Her tone dropped lower. "Colder, Congressman Schiff," she said, every syllable measured like a scalpel. "You may want to reconsider the direction you're choosing. This is a legal proceeding, not a cable news panel." The energy shifted. The arrogant shift carried into the room. It evaporated. He faltered, shoulders slumped. If only. For a second he opened his mouth to respond, but Pirro raised a single hand. "No," she said sharply. "You've made your point now. You'll listen to mine." He sat back, quiet, visibly shaken. "I asked you a direct question," Pirro continued, "about a government memo, not your opinion of me. Either you answer it or I issue a contempt warning for disruption of proceedings." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Schiff swallowed hard. The fire in his eyes dulled in. That moment it became painfully clear the courtroom had turned on him and Judge Pirro. She wasn't just holding the gavel. She was holding the blade. She flipped through her folder slowly, deliberately. Every page turned like the ticking of a bomb. "I will repeat the question," she said, her voice steady, unforgiving. "Were you aware that your office approved the release of a memo that conflicted with sworn testimony?" Schiff hesitated. He glanced to his attorney. The man shifted in his seat but said nothing. Finally Schiff leaned toward the mic, his voice once sharp, now muted. "I was made aware, but not before the document was circulated." He said, "There was a miscommunication between my senior staff." Pirro didn't blink. "So your position," she said slowly, "is that national intelligence confusion was the result of a staff error?" "I'm not placing blame," Schiff said quickly, "but I didn't authorize it knowingly." Pirro closed the file in front of her with a sharp, deliberate snap. "In that case, Congressman, I suggest you prepare to clarify the chain of custody in writing this. Hearing isn't about emotion. It's about accountability." The walls felt closer now, the weight in the room heavier. Pirro let the silence stretch. "Before speaking again, you were entrusted with Oversight of the most sensitive intelligence in the country, she said. Do you understand the gravity of that responsibility? Yes, Schiff said to Fast. Pirro narrowed her eyes, then explain why your name is the only congressional signature on that memo. When multiple committee members claimed they never saw it, another pause. Schiff's mouth opened, then closed. He looked around searching, but no one offered him a lifeline. I was advised it. It was procedural, he finally said. The release was expedited for. Clarity, Pirro leaned in. Clarity, she held up the memo you call a document, missing 3 key testimony segments. Clarity said nothing. Couldn't Pirro folded her hands neatly in front of her. You may want to reflect, Congressman, on whether your reaction to my question earlier was passion or panic, the redness creeping up. Schiff's neck told the room everything. This wasn't confidence, it was exposure he was unraveling, and he knew it, Pirro. Stared cold, calculating when you lashed out, she said. Slowly, was it because you didn't like the question, or because you already knew? The answer didn't serve you? Schiff inhaled, exhaled, and finally, softly, I spoke out of turn, he said that was inappropriate. Gasps. Not from what he said, but that he said. Schiff didn't do apologies. Not like this. Pirro didn't react. No nod, no acknowledgement, just the sound of a clock ticking somewhere in the background. She turned. Another page looked up. Admission is a start, she said. Accountability is the next step. Your office will submit a complete record of internal communications. Within 72 hours, if any documents are found withheld or altered, I will move to initiate formal sanction review. A gasp from the back. This was no longer just an ethics slap. This was the beginning of something far more consequential. Schiff blinked. Rapidly, his jaw tensed. His lawyer scribbled furiously on a notepad just when the storm felt like it had peaked. A court officer approached and whispered something into Pirro's ears. She listened, nodded once, then turned to the mic for the record. She said, her tone shifted, alert, controlled. We've just received confirmation that a supplemental document, previously unreleased, was leaked to the press this morning. A wave of murmurs rolled through the chamber. Phones lit up. Reporters scrolled frantically at the document. Pirro continued, contains the unredacted portion of the memo in question, including the sections that were, shall we say, inconveniently omitted. Schiff's face went pale like a man watching his own funeral did. You instruct anyone in your office to withhold these sections? Pirro asked. No, absolutely not, Schiff replied, if that document was leaked. I wasn't aware of it. Pirro stared at him, convenient. Timing, she said flatly. Either someone's working against you from the inside, you've lost control of your office. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. She was right either way. It looked damning. Pirro sat back. This hearing just entered a new phase, she said, and Congressman, if I were you, I'd be less concerned about public opinion and more concerned about who's willing to burn you to save themselves. The room was spinning, but it wasn't over. Pirro turned to the clerk. Call your next witness. The name hit like a hammer. Mr. Langston, please take the stand. Every head turned. David Langston, Schiff's longtime chief of staff. Schiff's eyes widened. His face strained further. Langston stood, straightened his tie, walked forward slowly, but his hands trembled. He was sworn in. Pirro wasted no time. Mr. Langston, she said, you were copied on several internal emails regarding the memo. You become aware of the discrepancies. Langston hesitated. The world held its breath 3 days before it was published. He said. Pirro leaned in. Did you inform Congressman Schiff? Langston looked at his former boss, then back at the judge. Yes, he said. Quietly. Gasps. And did he instruct you to proceed anyway? Langston closed his eyes for a beat, then opened them. Yes, and, quote, it'll die in the noise, just put it out. The room exploded. Cameras clicked. Reporters whispered frantically into their phones. Schiff looked like he'd been punched hard. Pirro. She didn't flinch. She simply smiled. She had waited for this moment, and it had arrived. Langston sat, still pale, but resolute. You're under oath, Pirro said. You understand the penalty for perjury. I do, he replied. And you stand by that quote. Langston's voice was steel. I didn't want to testify against him, but I won't lie. Not after what that memo did. The damage was nuclear. Schiff tried to speak. His attorney pulled his sleeve, urging silence. Pirro's eyes never left him. If your own chief of staff testifies that you knowingly pushed out a deceptive memo, this court may move to recommend formal ethics charges, possibly even a criminal referral. She paused. This hearing will recess until tomorrow. Your testimony will resume after we complete a review of Mr. Langston's communications log. I suggest you reconsider your earlier statements. The gavel still hadn't fallen. It didn't have to. The room was already broken. And Schiff, he didn't move. He just sat there, hollow eyes unfocused. The next day, the chamber was still buzzing. Schiff returned, thinner, pale. His suit fit looser. He walked slowly, eyes down. Pirro entered. This session will resume, she said. Congressman, do you have a statement? Schiff inhaled, then leaned in. I want to begin by acknowledging the seriousness of these proceedings, said I. Allowed frustration to override judgment. My outburst was unprofessional, and I regretted silence, but more importantly, I acknowledged that the release of the redacted memo was mishandled. I did not alter its contents directly, but I take full responsibility for what happened under my leadership. Gasps. Again, I accept the committee's review, and I will cooperate fully, whatever the recommendation. I will not hide from it. Pirro stared, unmoving. This hearing is concluded, she said. Findings will be submitted. Within 10 days, this court stands in recess. She stood. He did not. The storm had passed, but Adam Schiff, he was still drowning in the aftermath.